My name is Heather. I'm gonna try not to fall or pass out or say anything stupid. Um, I I was asked to talk for a minute today, and my gut instinct is just to say no because I can sing all day, but talking is always different. So I'm gonna try not to like shake too bad or um, look at my page and see nothing because that's usually what happens. So bear with me. But yeah, my name is Heather. I think I've met everyone in here. Um, Obviously, I'm on the worship team, and my husband Mo is in the back. There he is. But we are in Advent, as you know, we're in the third week, which is about joy. And so, for some reason, they wanted me to talk today. I don't know, but I think we've all heard before. So it's common, but I think a normal mistake that people make is confusing happiness with joy. Um, so what is the difference? I mean, I'm still learning that, I think, but happiness, I have heard and read and have experienced, is more of a kind of fleeting, dependent on your circumstances type of thing. Um, but then there's joy. Um, and so I think joy we can to reframe as a God, Christ-centered feeling, not feeling, but centered in God and dependent on turning towards Him instead of just trying to find happiness in our situations. And so we've heard from Amanda already, and then Samantha and Aiden last week. And just like with their situations, joy is usually not learned in times of ease. It is not learned through um, through happy times, ironically. Um, but in times of trial, in times of grief or pain, which Moses and I have had our share of this year. So most of you know, but a brief recap of our journey this year. Um, in March, Moses got a call from his doctor. He'd had some blood work done, and they called him and said, "You need to go to the emergency room. There's just some weird stuff showing up in your blood work." So I was teaching my piano class at Rock Valley, and he calls me, says that we need to go, and I'm just like, "What? Can I finish my last class? Do we need to leave right now?" So I finished what I was doing and go home, and it's just amazing, like just like that, things in your life can change. And so we go. He was in the hospital for a few days. We eventually discovered that it was a medication that he had been on for his cholesterol that kind of triggered this reaction in his body. It was um, eating away at his muscles, basically. Um, so up to that point, he hadn't really been weak or anything, but his arms and legs had been really tight and just didn't feel right. So they put him on fluids and a bunch of other stuff at the hospital, which took that tightness away. But then we leave, and these hospital doctors, when you're admitted, they're not always getting the full picture of things. They're just trying to get you to a point where they can send you home. So we go home, and from there he just gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and continue to after just each month, just getting worse. We're waiting to get a rheumatologist. So long story short, it would be another 2 to 3 months, as well as 2 more kind of multi-day hospital stay to get on a path of healing and figuring out what was going on. And finally getting a rheumatologist who can, figure things out. We discovered that the medication had triggered like an autoimmune response in his body. So his immune system was attacking his muscles. So at that point, as you guys saw over the summer, he had a cane. He couldn't really get up on his own. I was running our lawn care business in his stead, along with family members on both of our sides. But then he got on the right medication. He started doing physical therapy. He, as you see now, can move freely. Um, and he can work to some degree, and he's still doing physical therapy. But looking back over the last 9 months, um, there were so many moments where, your happiness reserves, as you could say, were just depleted. So how do we find joy um, when we're facing endless doctor's appointments and a scary diagnosis? Um, the long nights of staying in the hospital with him, sending so many health updates to you guys, to family. It was draining. Sorry. Um, there were so many days I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to do what I needed to do, but you have to. And so I had to make the decision. I had to give it to God. I had to lay it down. Um, coffee helps everything. Um, and then I had these 3 Bible verses that kind of stuck with me. Um, in Romans, we read, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. In 1 Thessalonians, it says, rejoice always, pray continually, and give thanks in all circumstances. And then Nehemiah says, the joy of the Lord is your strength. I didn't need to pretend to be happy or try to be optimistic. One of you were talking about that, right? Just trying to have an optimistic look at life, like everything's just going to be fine, or try to find the good in everything. What I needed to do was to draw on God's strength and remember his goodness and faithfulness. And in doing so, then I was able to start finding joy. It's hard to, like we've heard from the other gals, it's hard to define or truly explain when you're experiencing things like joy or hope or peace. It's hard to explain what that actually means. But the heaviness of our circumstances, the weight of each day became lighter, more bearable. So I was able to find hope, like Amanda talked about. From hope, there is peace, like we heard last week. And then from that hope and peace, there was joy coming out of that. Another key aspect of me being able to find God's joy was with you guys, the community. All of your prayers were deeply felt. Your encouragement, your meals. Sorry. Your generosity had a huge impact on our souls. So thank you for being there for us. Thank you. I have big feelings, and whether it's mad or sad or happy, I just cry. It's just the way it comes out. So, thank you. um, so thank you guys. Community is necessary to truly experience the love, the hope, and the strength of God. So today, we will light the candle of joy. And as we do that, we know that true joy is knowing that Jesus has already come and he's coming again. Our struggle in this life is not the final word. And if you are struggling right now, I encourage you to turn your gaze to the one who promises to be your strength. Joy isn't a feeling that you chase, it's a gift that you receive. So may the joy of the Lord be your strength this week, no matter what your circumstances are that you're facing.
Yeah, so continuing on our Advent series and today focusing on the topic of joy. Just wanted to start by, just acknowledging that Christmas is the season where everything is magnified, everything is bigger. So we do, more planning, more elaborate events, and it's really about building kind of these special moments. And so on the one hand, it's kind of these higher highs and, really nice moments with family and memories and traditions. Um, but it can also be a really difficult season. And part of what makes that difficult is that it is so much about, creating those special moments and following traditions and the memories that we have. So whether it's a health related issue, or maybe you're just disconnected in this season of life, and so you kind of watch on as other people are participating in these gatherings and different things. It can feel worse if you're feeling bad. So it's kind of this higher highs and lower lows. And so, with the topic of joy, in certain seasons, at certain times, that can feel a little grating. It's like, I don't have that right now. um, and so, yeah, just want to acknowledge that everyone's at different places, and as Heather illustrated, sometimes it's actually found in those places that are really difficult, and so we can hope for the joy um, and just see how God moves within our lives. And I love the way that you ended that, because as I was reflecting on joy, I was just thinking of, like, what is the opposite of joy? Joy, um, the opposite of that would be like sadness or loss. Um, and as I was thinking about joy, it almost came more as like we're receiving something. So whether that's something significant that's happening in our lives, or um, some good thing for your family, you are in a posture of receiving. It's not really you're creating it; it happens and it comes and you experience it. Um, and um, more on the topic of just Advent in general. I remember as Craig was talking, him reminding us that there, are multiple Advents. So there's the Advent of Jesus being born, which is what we normally focus on, but there's also the Advent of waiting for his second coming. And then as I was preparing, there was someone that mentioned another Advent that I hadn't really thought about before, and that's the advent of Jesus coming into our lives. And so there can be a waiting for that in different ways. Maybe there's a particular moment that you have where you're like, oh, that's where Jesus came in, and kind of a story to go along with that. Maybe it was a journey. Maybe it was over years, and then you could see, at the end of that, that's where Jesus was really coming in. And then as we just observe those people that are around us, how is Jesus coming into their lives, waiting for Jesus to um, be with them as well. And so my talk and my focus is it's going to be more on that Jesus coming into our lives, Advent and that joy. And so we can all acknowledge that we long for Jesus to be in our lives more and more. That ebbs and flows, but really that's what church is about. Um, and again, Heather really articulated things that I was thinking about as I was preparing really well. And as she was saying at the end, our um, experience of God a lot of times happens through our experience of others. So He created us for connection. He wired us with five senses and ways that we connect to each other through relationships. And He Himself, lived life on earth and was really like relationally connecting. He was touching people and healing people. He was teaching them. He was mourning for them, or he was arguing with them, but he, experienced relationship in a real, like, bodily sense. Um, And so we again have this Advent tension of, Jesus died, resurrected, and his body is no longer with us. Um, and, you know, we of course have his teachings. He spent years teaching his followers. So we've got these words from him, um, and we've got all of his stories. But, Jesus had a plan to continue his presence, you know, well beyond his earthly life that he lived. And so um, before he died, he talked to his disciples and he said, "I'm going to leave you a helper, the Holy Spirit, and he's going to be with you always. And it's actually going to be better." And um, it's kind of curious because it's like, well, what is better than really experiencing you in person? Um, what's better than a hug from a family member? Someone living and breathing. Um, but that was his promise, and after um, he made that promise and he died and he raised and left, we had the Pentecost, and so his spirit fused with the church in a particular moment, and it just exploded. All of these people proclaiming him, as Lord, and the church growing through all of the trials and persecutions. Um, and so you kind of have this amazing manifestation of his spirit that is taking place with these people um, in a really amazing way. Um, and at that same time, a little after, Paul taught that the church is his body. And so, mainly, or what we take away from that is, Christ is the head and we are the body. And so, we are connected with him. We have this connection together with him. And then, somehow we are doing the things that, he would want. And that's very true. Um, but I think that we can gloss over that and maybe distance from what is a real presence and relationship that we get with him. So when we get together at church and when we're relating to one another, we're actually experiencing Jesus through that because he says that the church is his body. And so we have these wonderful stories, difficult stories like Heather shared, where we kind of have this, supernatural support and encouragement that we get from one another. And what I think is really cool, again, because God wired us this way for relationship, is that even though Jesus isn't here, we are here for each other. We're connected to each other through him. And so, like Jesus was on this earth and interacting with um, his followers and loving people and doing all the things that he did, we are the church for each other. And we don't do that perfectly. We don't always reflect Jesus as he is. And I think, um, as a church, we're wrestling through what does it mean to participate in the Spirit? What does it mean that the Spirit is with us, and how do we more surrender to who Jesus is to open up, more of this relationship and this church experience. Um, and so I just, it made me pause as I thought about what feels like kind of trivial interactions, uh, and how, we can see that we are interacting not only with each other, but also with Jesus. And so again, Jesus promised that um, His Spirit would be with us, He would be with us, and that it would actually be better after He was gone. And so you can see how not only in our church body, but across borders, across cultures, um, across the world, people are gathering today in honor of Jesus, but also embodying what Jesus was about for each other and honoring Him in that way. So, I have an activity for us to do. um, so, Advent is about waiting. And like I said, we're kind of waiting for Jesus' second coming. So, what do you do when you're waiting? Well, kind of like look at the clock or whatever. But one of the practices that Jesus and the church instituted is remembering. And you can throw up the title of it. So today we are going to do a Stones of Remembrance activity. So I need a little help.
60 pens and 50 plates.
You pass the pens out. Craig, pass out pens and then plates. So everyone is, am I on? Yeah. Everyone is going to get a plate and a pen. And I'm always jealous that my kids come home with an activity and something, that they've written. But yeah, so in this season, while we wait, we remember how the Lord has been faithful to us. And so this is something, I don't know, it's probably 12 years ago, Amanda and I did in our small group. Um, and we took cups and we wrote, reflecting on the last year, how has God been faithful to us? And the reference is from the Old Testament. There was a particular point where the Israelites were being attacked by the Philistines, and they cried out to the Lord. They repented. They said, "We're done with our idols and other gods," and God saved them. And so Samuel took a stone and he set it up between Mizpah and Shen and called its name Ebenezer, the stone of help, where he said, "Till thus far the Lord has helped us." Um, And I just think it's really good to reflect on. It's really good to reflect on how God has been faithful to Grassroots. The beginning of the year, Evan was working through a move with their family to get to move closer to their family, and so that was like uncertainty in the church. What's going to happen next? And over the summer, them making the move, and then Craig coming in and serving as pastor, us being here, like we started out the year in the chapel, and here we are. The Lord has been really faithful. And so, yeah, just take 5 minutes here. Chris, you want to flip on the next slide? If you lose track, how has God been faithful to you? What has most impacted your faith? What do you want to remember from this year? And so you guys can fill this out, and then you'll be able to take your stone of remembrance with you and remember. Yeah, take time later today and just kind of reflect on those. You can remember it and just kind of remember where you were at, what that felt like, and continue to experience God's love in your life.